Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to our panel on disruptive innovation. My name is Maggie Johnson. I'm Director of Education and University Relations at Google. And I have a few logistics I have to cover first, so let me start there. We are broadcasting live via Google Plus Hangouts from the Hyatt Regency in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is SIGCSE 2014. Welcome to our virtual audience. We have quite a sizable audience who's joining us virtually. For those online, please submit your questions via the Q&A icon on the video screen. Panelists can view the online questions via the projector over here. Our live audience can post questions via the web or direct questions to the panel when we ask for them later in the session. If you want to get to the event link, there's a QR code on the poster that you saw when you walked in, so feel free to use that. Please note that if you opt to ask a live question, you may be recorded and visible to a virtual audience. And the opinions expressed here reflect the views of the person who gave them and not Google or SIGCSE. So just a few things to start. So we all know high school and college students have been studying computer science for some time now, actually many years. But in the last couple of years, we've seen some really significant changes. So the group of panelists that we have up here have been behind some of those significant changes. And what we'd like to do today is have the panelists discuss their ideas, their work, where they're going from here, and then see how that combines with what's going on in the community so we can all prepare to kind of get positioned for the really positive changes that are coming. So let me start with some intros. Right here we have Pamela Fox from Khan Academy. Pamela creates the computer science curriculum and delivery platform for Khan. That means she figures out what topics to teach, how to teach it effectively online, and she analyzes the feedback and statistics to make sure that the curriculum is actually effective. She also manages the active community of learners that are participating in the Khan Academy CS curriculum. So welcome, Pamela. In the middle there we have, do we have?
She's there.
Yes, we have Jane Margolis, who is here virtually.
Can you see?
She's actually out in UCLA. She couldn't get here today, but she's here nonetheless. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, Jane is a senior researcher at the UCLA Graduate School of Education and Information Studies. She's also a social scientist who focuses on educational inequity and segregation. For the last 15 years, she's studied the low numbers of females and students of color in computer science. She is the author of 2 award-winning books, Unlocking the Clubhouse, Women in Computing, and Stuck in the Shallow End, Education, Race, and Computing. Jane and her team have also designed and implemented the Exploring Computer Science curriculum, which has been highly successful in the LA Unified School District and other school districts across the country. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We got to make sure it works.
Can you hear me?
Wait a minute. She's waving. It's okay.
I'm waving.
Can you move on and talk to Jane in a moment? And then last but not least, we have Hadi Partovi. Hadi is an entrepreneur and investor and also the co-founder of Code.org. As an entrepreneur, he was on the founding teams of Tell Me and I Like. He is previously he was Microsoft's Group Program Manager for Internet Explorer. He was also General Manager of MSN.com. So with those intros, I'd like to start by asking each of you to identify a single word or a phrase that describes the state of computer science education today, and then tell us why you have chosen that word or phrase. Pamela, you want to start?
So I'm supposed to do homework. Okay. Single phrase. Today, everything is changing. I mean, it's crazy to be here and see everything that everyone is trying. And all the different ways that people are learning. In San Francisco, I encounter people that are learning to code in whether they're learning online, they're learning via MOOCs, they're learning in community colleges, and those are the people that are learning later in life. So there's tons of people that are learning later in life, and they're finding all these different ways to do that with boot camps and all that. And then we see all this trickling down to the younger schools too. So I don't know, it's all changing a lot right now. So it's hard to say one word to describe all that change.
Thank you. And Jane?
I would say that, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I would say that what's happening in computer science is one of the civil rights movements of today. And while it carries a lot of responsibility and that we have to be very vigilant, and the reason why we have to be very vigilant is that computer science and technology is really part of the growing inequality in our country. And so will our efforts disrupt this inequality that is happening, or will it reify it? And so I think we're at a very pivotal point.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Hadi?
Well, if you want one word, I would say exploding, in terms of just this pace at which things are changing, like Pamela said, but also just the growth of computer science. In fact, I think our schools are having trouble keeping up with at least the demand for this type of education, which is growing quite fast. But it's thanks to the internet that we can at least reach a lot of the kids, whether it's through tutorials like Khan Academies or Code.org's tutorials at the younger levels, or many other people. We're enabling a lot of kids to learn online, something that they can't learn at school, which is fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Jane, if you could take a few minutes to just talk about some of the challenges that you see in computer science education and how those challenges have evolved over the years.
Okay. Again, it's what I started off with, which is about the inequality. We have, over the last 10 years, really laid a wonderful foundation of organizations that have been trying to tackle this problem. And so the numbers, while they have not moved much except in some isolated pockets, and I think you all know who you are and you should be very proud of all your efforts, nationwide, if you look at who's taking getting bachelor's degrees in computer science or AP computer science as an indicator, there hasn't been that much movement. But what there has been is this incredible consciousness, efforts, initiatives to broaden participation in computing, and organizations really taking incredible steps to look at policy, curriculum, pedagogy, all the different components so that we are poised to really take advantage of this explosion, as Hadi used his word. And so, again, the question for me is, are our efforts going to disrupt the inequality, or are they going to reify it? And that's the challenge that I think we have before us. So the question is, which students are we going to be consciously trying to reach? What is our mission? These are tensions that exist within our community. We, in our Exploring Computer Science project, are for computer science for all students. That's our mission, to democratize this knowledge. So the question is, which students are we trying to reach? How do we take into account different learning styles, different privileges that students have had before they even walk into the classroom? What is happening to give some students preparation and others not? And as a community, how can we address this? What are the assumptions we make about different students and how they learn? And what is the pedagogy that is being used? What does educational research show us about how to reach students who have been marginalized and underrepresented? How do we scale up so that we are assured that it is just not the privileged that are going to be getting this education, but really it'll take hold with students that have been marginalized? And what are the images that are being projected from industry? How do we disrupt some of those images in industry even that says to be in computer science, you have to be smart? Well, in this country, smart is totally based on, it's gendered, it's racialized, and it's based on so much privilege. And so how do we, as a community, all of us together, reflect on this and try to change the narrative about who can do computer science, and what is the scaffolding that all of the students who have been underrepresented need to succeed? And so I think that's a huge challenge for all of us.
Can I say a comment on that?
Of course.
I'm going to say something about what Jane said. Jane, I hope you can see me.
Hi,
it's
Hadi.
weird talking next to television. I agree with everything Jane said, but I like to think of the same thing less as a problem to solve, but more as an opportunity. And in particular, I don't think computer science or the tech industry are a problem. In fact, I think they're awesome. I think computer science and the tech industry combined, to me, represent the new American dream. The new American dream isn't to go west and build a log cabin, it's to build the next Snapchat or the next WhatsApp. That is the ultimate American dream these days. And so in a world of increasing inequality, we have a field that is very meritocratic compared to most fields that you could go into. This is one of the fields where, whether you're an immigrant, whatever race you are, whatever gender you are, if you can do the job really well, you have a far greater chance of getting a job than in many, many other fields that are much more discriminatory. And so we have an opportunity to reverse the growing income inequality gap if we solve the education issue. And the place, I guess, where there's a problem or a civil rights issue isn't necessarily in tech or in computer science, it's in our public school system. And of course it is a problem, but solving that problem creates this great opportunity to, I guess, reverse the growing income and otherwise inequality gap in this country.
So for both Pamela and Hadi, what does Code.org and Khan Academy do to participate, or excuse me, encourage participation of girls and underrepresented minorities?
Yeah, so for Khan Academy, I've just started looking at our gender, because one of the things that I want to make sure is that the curriculum we create is actually gender neutral and doesn't bias one or the other. I actually, since I create the curriculum, I sometimes worry that I might be making it too much like what I always loved out of programming, which is more creativity and that stuff. But I looked at the data last week, and we actually have equal completion rates for both genders, so that makes me really excited. But I'll keep looking at it to see if there's any particular parts of the curriculum that do have some biases there. So what we saw is that if we can get the girls doing the curriculum, they're as likely to complete it as the guys. So but we do still have less females and males doing it. So we're looking into, we're actually maybe after this going to launch a program that will have an incentive to encourage their teachers to get girls in their classroom to do the curriculum in particular. And so I'm excited about that, because that will actually give teachers an excuse to encourage girls. Because what I've seen is you have to reach out specifically. Because on the side, I also teach for Girl Develop It, which is this global nonprofit that teaches web development to women who suddenly decide at age 30 or whatever that they want to learn web development. And everybody always asks, like, why don't you just have it be for for any gender? Why are you doing this sexist thing? But when we specifically force ourselves to say this is going to be just for women, and we're going to make sure that we fill 30 spots at this event with women, then that makes it so that I have to reach out to women, and I have to make them feel welcome and invited, right? So sometimes with these situations, you have to make them feel like they didn't feel like they were invited before. You have to say, no, this is something that we've done just for you, right? So in this case with Khan Academy, we're going to try and get the teachers to reach out to their students and say, look, this is something that we really want you to do and we think you can do, and hopefully that gives us them the impetus to try it. We're also working on a series of kind of articles about people in the profession that are a range of genders, races, hobbies, fields, just locations, every type of diversity that I could think of. And hopefully there'll be some role model for everybody in there. And these aren't celebrities, these are just everyday people that show that there's programmers of all types.
In terms of what Code.org is doing, there's a number of things, but certainly all of our marketing, while it might not be about recruiting girls or recruiting African Americans or recruiting Hispanic Americans, there's multiple groups, so we didn't name our organization after any one of them, but all of our videos all of our curriculum stuff is all made to basically broaden people's perception of who participates in computer science. So the video tutorials that Code.org has, we have, and we talk about our tutorials being taught by Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, but Chris Bosh, the basketball player, is by far the most popular guy in anything we've done among students. And we've also made sure to have not only programmers or athletes and celebrities, but doctors, women, from different backgrounds, different genders, different races, presenting sort of our computer science curriculum. And that alone changes people's perception, if they're watching it, of who is a computer scientist and what is computer science about. Data-wise, we have the opposite of numbers. I guess Khan Academy, we have amazing, awesome participation by girls, but we don't have equal completion rates on our tutorials. On the hour of code, we had basically a 48-52 ratio between girls and boys, which is amazing. And in our longer ongoing tutorial, we have 40% female participation rate, which is great, but the completion rate among the boys is higher. But I actually think the problem starts with participation, and I think the second problem is the easier one to solve. Our overall view of how to solve the participation issue actually is about bringing this into elementary school and middle school. And we don't have a math participation issue because math is required, but also in elementary school and middle school, everybody takes it. And if we bring computer science into an elementary school, 4th grade classroom, there won't be this, it'll be completely 50-50 because that's what the kids are doing. And in fact, the reason the hour of code had such an awesome ratio isn't because we marketed it to girls, it's because we marketed it to teachers, and not just computer science teachers, to English teachers and math teachers. So we strongly think that the early years and via regular classrooms is how to increase participation by all groups, women, and all the underrepresented groups.
Okay, thank you. So one disruption we saw last year was the hour of code. Oh, sorry, Jane. Jane speaking.
Could I just make a short reply?
Of course.
Okay. I'm hearing reverberations, so I will proceed.
I think you can try it again.
I wanted, Hadi, first of all, I heard you gave a wonderful keynote, so I wish I had been there and heard it. And I just want to take one objection to what you said, which is I think that it is not right to state that it is just a meritocracy. Currently, there is so much privilege and home resources and good schools that go into the kids that make it in computer science. And it is the problem with the schools. Yes, of course there's a problem. But there's a problem with unconscious bias that we have in our society about who is smart, who can tackle this work. And that bias affects who stays and who leaves and who decides to go into this industry in the first place. And so I feel that as a community, we have to look everywhere, and we have to look at the culture that's being created in this country around the tech field and really examine some of the assumptions that are being made about who can do this work and who can't. And I agree we have a wonderful opportunity to do this together as a community. And I think these tensions are good to talk about together.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good point, because I'm also an engineer, so I'm also, like, I spend half my time at industry events and doing, like, all this industry stuff. And there's a lot of talk in the industry about different biases, and, like, for example, one of the big issues is the way that people get recruited and the way that people get interviewed, right? And there's actually a tool that you can send your job description through to see if it's guilty of things that tend to make some people feel uncomfortable or feel not as likely to go for the offer, right? Because there's certain, like, ways of wording things and adjectives and all that stuff that automatically weed out people, right? Like I have a BS and MS in computer science, and I still didn't think that I was qualified for a software engineer job. The only reason I became a software engineer, like at Coursera, was because they tricked me into the interview. Otherwise, I wouldn't have applied because I read the job descriptions and didn't think I qualified, which is crazy because like I had more commits than anybody that year. But the thing is like the way, so just starting with like the hiring, right? With the job descriptions, that alienates people, right? And then there's the interview process itself. Like when I did my interview process at Khan Academy, I literally cried. I spent my entire interview sobbing on the phone. Because it is creepy having somebody ask you, having somebody ask you to do a problem on the phone, and it is not what you do on the job, right? The job isn't competitive. Like, jobs are collaborative. Software engineering jobs are much about collaboration, peer review, and all that stuff. So why are we putting people through this horrible, horrible process of the tech interview, right? So this, like, and I guess this is important to me because in SF we have all these coding academies that people are going to, and a lot of them are women going to these coding academies because they suddenly decide after college that they want to change jobs. They go to it and then they try and get a job, but they're trying to get a job in a world where recruiters expect you to have gone to a traditional college and to be able to do asking questions on demand on the phone, and all that just seems ridiculous. So I do think that we need a lot of reform in the actual industry as well to actually get people hired once they've been through the various ways of learning computing. But there's a whole other field area.
Appreciate that. Okay, so moving on then, one of the things that we wanted to bring up was our code and the massive scale that it reached last year. Hadi, what were some of the aspects of your program that enabled you to reach 27 million students? And after that, I'll also ask both Shane and Pamela to talk about the overall participation level for their programs and their scaling strategy.
Yeah, well, by far, the reason the Hour of Code was so successful was the number of partners we had behind it. And I actually remember very, very well the day that the idea for the Hour of Code came up was, I think, June 28th. And the moment I thought of it, I just thought this is probably the biggest idea I've ever had and the biggest thing I'll ever do. And not because an hour of code is important, but because I knew computer science is something that lots of people want to teach their kids. Every American has this sense of technology is moving by faster than I can keep up. And the idea that my kids are also going to fall behind is something that every American wants to avoid. And the basic idea is let's give them a 1 hour action to basically help take a step to solve that problem. And the nice thing about it is it was designed from the start as something that many, many, many partners can participate in. So partners is the reason why the Hour of Code is a success. Lots of people have heard, wow, this big thing is happening. But if we go through the list of things partners did for us, Google put it on their homepage, Khan Academy sent an email to every single Khan Academy student ever to do the Hour of Code. Code Academy did the same with every single one of their students. We had Apple putting it into every single retail store. We had the president deliver a speech. I can keep going on and on about different groups. The CSTA made a mailing to every single computer science teacher. The college board wrote to every AP teacher. And then the teachers who participated putting it in classrooms are where actually the bulk of the growth of the program came. But for sure, the reason it was successful is because we decided to make it an umbrella effort for everybody who cares about education and the future of technology in our country and actually in our world.
Thank you, Hadi. Pamela, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, so he mentioned it for Khan Academy. It was awesome for us because we had just finally put together our full beginner curriculum, and so this was an excuse to tell people about it. So we emailed all the students as well as all of the teachers, and some of the students were like, "What is this? Normally you tell me about math," but it was cool because we had 1 million or 2 million people do it that week. So that was incredible, yeah, so we saw a huge uptick in that, and it was crazy going to the high school that I volunteer at and walking in and seeing all these Hour of Code posters everywhere and seeing it on the board because teachers just grabbed onto and made a thing. And it was great for us because it was an excuse to. So we told teachers about it actually 3 weeks before. We wanted to give them time to prepare. So we had a page how to do Hour of Code, maybe some handouts you want, yada yada. And so teachers immediately asked, Is it translated into Spanish? Is it something that deaf students can do? Does it work on the iPad? So those are all questions that we said, all of those, the answers to that can all be yes if you give us 2 weeks. So that was a great impetus to get things done, to make our curriculum more accessible, because Hour of Code had such a big reach, right? There were people tweeting photos of the deaf students doing it, people doing it in different countries, so it was a great excuse to make sure that that curriculum was actually accessible to as many different crowds of people that wanted to do it.
And Jane, about exploring computer science, what's the reach there and your scaling strategy?
First of all, an answer, Hour of Code had an incredible, exciting reverberation.
Exciting reverberation.
Through Los Angeles School District as well. And I think LAUSD, I'm not sure if it was the school district that did most of Hour of Code. It was some up there somewhere. And we had a wonderful partnership meeting where we brought in a lot of people. And basically what we're focusing now on is really sustaining it within the district. And so a resolution was just put before the board of LAUSD to build on this momentum and to encourage the district to create a whole pathway and program of study around computer science and to look at what can be done. So that was a wonderful success. So in terms of scaling up and out, our key focus is on scaling out. We're doing that in partnership with Code.org across the country. Prior to Code.org, we had scaled out to Chicago, LAUSD, different places around the country. But now we have a lot of support to do that. But our key thing is we choose very carefully the schools that we go to. We want them to be schools that have been high concentrations of students that have been traditionally underrepresented in this field, that don't have the privilege of having computer science education in their schools. And we're talking about sustainability. How do you make this program stick? And how do you engage teachers? Because teachers are the really key to all of this. And how do you build teacher learning communities that want to change the culture in the schools, a culture that takes these students that are there, the traditionally underrepresented, and see that what they bring to the classroom are assets and not deficits, and that we work with the teachers. What they do every day is how to reach all different kinds of learners and how to make them feel welcomed in a computer science classroom. So our challenge right now is really about sustainability and keeping the program accessible, welcoming, rigorous, challenging, creative, exciting for students who have been marginalized and underrepresented in the field.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jane. Another important ingredient for successful scale is to make sure your curriculum is both relevant and accessible. So Pamela, just in terms of Khan Academy, I mean, Khan Academy has transformed the way we think about scaling education anyone, anywhere. I mean, it's really had a huge impact over the last 5 years. So for Pamela and then for everyone else on the panel, how do you make computer science relevant and accessible to young people?
So our curriculum uses JavaScript and Processing.js, and processing, if you've never used it, is a way of creating drawings and animations. So it tends to be a very creative way of learning programming. So pretty much everything you're doing, you're outputting some sort of drawing or animation, or eventually becomes a game. So it seems to be that everybody really likes it because you can take it multiple ways. Like with that, with Alice, they showed that people seem to like Alice because maybe the girls tended to make stories and the guys tended to make games. You can make both of those in that sort of visual environment. And we are using JavaScript, so it is technically, JavaScript is a language that you can take and use pretty much everywhere now. JavaScript is incredibly ubiquitous now. People are using it to make robots. They're using it to write servers. They're obviously using it on the web. So it is technically a language that they can keep going with outside. But I think the big thing is that they like what they can create with it, and we put this big effort into making it easy to share your program and to see what other people are doing and to spin off other people's programs. So a lot of the Khan Academy stuff is big on the community, right? The community is the one answering all the questions, right? I don't answer most of the questions anymore. Community is always asking and answering questions. We actually just added a feature to make it easier to ask questions about your own program called the Help Request feature, because there's all people that want to help each other, right? And that's one of the things you can do with Scale, right? Is that you don't need TAs anymore. You just need enough people that are a few levels beyond that want to, pay it back and share their knowledge with the people below. And that, obviously is a big part of programming, is learning from others.
Jane? We're all waiting to see. Okay. Jane, so Aaron? Okay. So we'll go to Hadi first.
Sure.
Okay.
In terms of what we're doing for accessibility, within the curriculum, I think you asked is what are we doing for accessibility. For our early learners stuff, I guess we first of all use drag and drop programming, which is far easier for people to jump into without having to get worried about where the semicolons go or where the curly braces go or so on. But I think probably the most important thing we did to make computer programming accessible is getting Rovio and PopCap to let us use Angry Birds and Plants vs. Zombies. That alone, just my 5-year-old son and my daughter, I remember the day I brought those home, and all the kids wanted to do is play computer programming all night. And I realized that was basically, they didn't even think of it as a course, they just thought of it as the more recent game that Daddy showed them. And I think that is something that actually span all ages. The same night, my wife, who's 30 years older than the kids, also looked at our same course and wanted to play it for many hours just for the fun of it. And it's probably the only time I've shown her a new technology that she wanted to keep using after the demo of me showing it to her. So I think very much making it feel like a game was critical to making it accessible. And our big challenge now is to, as I mentioned during our keynote, how to actually go from just solving puzzles to creating things, creating artifacts, both because that's what kids want to do with computer programming, and because if you look at what the assessments in computer science ask for, they all lead to creating artifacts as well. The other thing we're doing for accessibility in the curriculum space, obviously, is our partnership with ECS. We now have 9 different regions where we're expanding ECS, where some of those are, we started in Chicago because that's already a place where ECS has taken strong roots in that district. But now across New York City.
What is ECS?
Oh, I'm sorry. Exploring Computer Science, the course that Jamie Margolis and Joanna and Gail, well, you guys know what Exploring Computer Science is, I assume. We're expanding that basically to Broward County, Florida, to Massachusetts, to New York City, Spokane, Washington, Montgomery, Maryland, Denver Public Schools. And our big challenge is how to maintain all the good stuff Jane mentioned in terms of quality and the sustainability, but also doing it at a much, much larger scale than anybody's done before. We'll find out after this summer and this coming school year how well we do at that.
Okay, Jane, I think you are on mute. I think you muted yourself.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. Sorry. Okay. How we make our program accessible, and is, well, first of all, we present role models. Just last week we had the Spellbots from Spelman College come out and gave a presentation about robotics to 400 LAUSD kids. And to see this all African-American female robotics team is literally exhilarating. So it's presenting these other models of who does computer science. But we do accessibility through our curriculum, which is specifically aimed at those kids that have not come into school with already doing some computer science, and it's purposely scaffolding their learning, so it builds a lot of collaboration, and a lot of the curriculum is based on culturally relevant assignments, so they tie in what their concerns are about their community and different aspects in their lives into computer science, and showing how computer science and that knowledge will really help them across all fields, and making it really relevant to them. And that's a real challenge about how to create a curriculum that makes people feel it's relevant if they've been marginalized their whole life, and how they can use it. And we have, within the curriculum, we promote a pedagogy that is very inquiry-based, it's project-oriented, it's hands-oriented, hands-on, and so it's a different kind of learning. It's just not delivery of content, but it's actually kids doing computer science and creating with computer science and bringing in all different kinds of thinking processes into it. And then a big part of how we make it accessible is we think teachers are key, and all of the research about underrepresented students and females, people that have been marginalized by the STEM fields, is that caring relationships with teachers are super important. All the research shows that. And so a really key component is to have a cohort of teachers that reflect on their own practices, how they can strengthen their own practices to and challenge their own assumptions about who can do well in this field, and be versatile with different kinds of learners. This is what teachers do every day, and they reflect as a community, and caring and having that mentorship relationship in the classroom with teachers and encouraging kids to mentor each other is a really important part of our program to make it accessible and welcoming.
Okay, thank you, Jane. So the discussion thus far has been on curriculum, and for those who have been working in this space over the last few years, trying to make computer science more available in the public school system, know that there are a lot of other aspects to the problem besides curriculum. Things like professional development, preparing teachers, teacher credentialing, getting credit for CS courses in high schools, and so forth. So to what extent have those of you on the panel been involved in some of these other aspects of the issue?
I mean, Khan Academy has kind of a different kind of way of thinking about classrooms. I mean, people use Khan Academy in many different ways, but Khan Academy, most of it is the math content, and so there's kind of a different sort of classroom that you do when you make it Khan Academy based, where you what we call personalized self-paced mastery learning, where you actually let the students go at their own pace. And ultimately, I come from traditional teaching style as well, where like I lecture and then they do an exercise for 30 minutes and then we go on to the next lecture. But whenever I try and do that, especially for extended period of time, the feedback is always that for some people I'm going too fast, and for the other people I'm going too slow. And it's kind of impossible to make both of them happy. So I'm moving, I see the self-paced style. I'm moving more towards that, and that's also what Khan Academy kind of envisions the future classroom as being more self-paced mastery with the individual skills, and then having more like group projects. So we're trying to help. Just Khan Academy generally does works with a lot of classrooms kind of as experiments to see how does this work. What does this change about the classroom dynamics, and tries to make case studies around that. So personally, there's a high school in San Francisco, Lowell High School, and I visit there once a week, and there's a teacher there who decided to start to use Khan Academy as the platform, and she started off very traditionally teaching when she would make slides and then they would follow, but then eventually, because she felt like that's what she was supposed to do, because the teacher before her had made all the curriculum, but eventually she was like, no, I'm just going to give them, Khan Academy, and then I'm just going to spend my time figuring out what group projects we could do, what other extra assignments we could do, how I can get them to do pair programming, more classroom management and mentoring and all that stuff, and she uses Khan Academy as a curriculum. So it's kind of a very different approach, but part of me thinks it could be a good idea because it's gonna take a while to teach that many teachers. What was it, the 10,000 teachers movement or something? It's a lot of teachers, and it's hard to find those teachers. So if you can't find them, you can use the virtual teacher, and then the teacher itself, can focus, be more of a facilitator and a mentor and a kind of TA.
Thank you. Hadi?
Yeah, sure. I don't know whether to respond to what Pamela said or to your question about some of the other things beyond curriculum, but we at Code.org have a strong belief that in public schools, especially for younger kids, you do need a teacher. But we also think that we can make things much easier for the teacher by giving them as much of the curriculum to be, as I called it before, just guided enough so that some of the things that might otherwise get a teacher stuck are not a problem that the teacher needs to deal with. In our curriculum, we're designing the classroom first. We're not perfect, but at least our design goal is for the teacher-led classroom as the primary customer, and then the student at home as the secondary customer. And so we intentionally have, some period of time of self-puzzles interrupted by a group activity, and we actually will also include the group activity as part of our overall package, and we're working to work on having our teacher dashboard even tell the teacher, now's a good time to interrupt and jump to the group activity because everybody's roughly finished stage 1 or so on. And fundamentally, I think having teachers is just how school works, and it's going to be hard to change that. The question you asked was about things like teacher certification and just things beyond the curriculum. For us, we haven't done much in this space in the past, but we think broadly about what can we do to solve the entire computer science education problem, and teacher certification and the pipeline and capacity building from the schools of ed is a critical part of the solution. And we can't do that all ourselves. We're looking to find partners to basically build certification exams. One personal goal I have for the organization is to do whatever it takes for there to be a practice exam for computer science in, say, 2 or 3 years, which maybe the speed of light for ETS to creating a praxis. And if it's not a praxis exam, if there could be one state certification exam that is good enough that we can point to it and tell every other state just use this for your certification exam, that would still solve a lot of problems for, I think, computer science as a whole. And that's not a problem we will necessarily solve, but it's, as part of what we do as an organization is to find partners to work with us to solve problems.
It's a good place to start. Jane?
Okay. We have been working on the policy realm as well, and what Hadi said, also trying to get CS certification pathways for teachers. So the policy is really important, and the pedagogy is really key. Part of the pedagogy that no one else has talked about that I want to bring up in this conversation, because it's a very important part of our pedagogy, is we are mostly in urban schools, and schools that are low-served, low-income students. And we work with teachers a lot. We all read the book Stuck in the Shallow End. We read other books that talk about issues of race and class and how they affect the culture of the schools and how they affect the attitudes of even administrators who either will cancel class because they think their kids aren't up to it, because maybe the AP CS test scores were low and there they cancel the class. But we work with all these dynamics and reflect about them in teachers about how race and class and standing of the school affect the curriculum, the culture, the attitude of the administrators have towards the students and their capacity and their ability. So I think these issues of belief systems are really important, and they're particularly important in the STEM fields that has so much bias about it, about who can do well and who doesn't do well. And it comes up all the time amongst kids talking between themselves about, oh, you're just a girl, or you can't do that. Only white and Asians do computer science. Blacks and Hispanics don't do it. They talk about this. And so how can teachers facilitate these discussions and make the students converse about it and realize they have a place in this arena and get engaged with the material? So that's a whole other dimension that we take really serious as part of teacher pedagogy.
Okay.
I want to make a really quick comment, by the way. If any of you are teachers out there and you hear your kids saying that this is something that only boys do or something that only white kids do, go back at least and say 48% of the people who did the hour of code were girls. And out of that group, it's 28 million kids now. So that's like 13 to 14 million girls, which should basically help at least dispel the stereotypes within schools that didn't participate. And we've also published the stats on African Americans and Hispanics. I don't have them off the top of my head, but they were also fundamentally much, much larger than anything that's been done before. So the best way to dispel stereotypes is with actual action, rather than just showing role models. It actually is no longer true, at least for one brief week. We completely broke the stereotype, and that's something to help message to kids.
Okay, one last question, and then we'll turn it over to the audience to take your questions. So what does success in computer science education look like to each of you over the next 2 to 3 years? Hadi, why don't you start?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Just keeping our heads straight about what things mean in the next year has been quite difficult for us. 2 to 3 years from now would be 2017-ish, I guess. By then, my hope is that we're in at least 30 or 40 different regions rather than 9 or 10, and that we've figured out how to scale at the pace of bringing on board many thousands of teachers a year. Right now we're going to have 500 teachers getting PD this summer, of which only 150 are high school teachers. So by 2017, first of all, we need to grow our funding backing, but we need to prove our ability to scale and get to a point where not just 1,000 teachers a year, but up to 5,000 teachers a year go through a PD program. And at that scale, we can bring this to the whole country. We think beyond the 10K goal, because the 10K goal is a high school goal, and actually it's all the high schools you need. It was just sort of a round number. But if you think of all high schools that don't have computer science, all middle schools and elementary schools, you add up to over 100,000 teachers needing PD. And so if we want to finish the century, we need to get to many thousands per year. So we won't get at maximum velocity in 2 to 3 years, but we want to at least get to the point where the only element needed is more money rather than figuring out what it takes to scale.
Okay, Jane?
A parallel, I have pretty similar vision, really hoping that what success would look like was when it's 50-50 women and men, and when there is real democratic representation of all races, and also the class issue, and that when we have pathways and programs of study of computer science in as many schools as possible, and that there is a real understanding from school districts across the country about the importance it is to bring this knowledge to all students. So it's very similar to what Hadi said. It's really CS for all is our goal, our mission.
Thanks, Jane.
So, so one of the things that I keep envisioning is that I think of programming as this skill that's similar to reading and writing and all that. So, and that's one of the cool things about Khan Academy is that we cover multiple topics. And so my vision is that actually you learn programming, like in middle school, and then you feel comfortable with it maybe, by the beginning of high school. And then you could actually start using programming to explore other areas, right? So using it to explore math and science and physics and astronomy and even art history. We've actually had art history coding challenges on Khan Academy to visualize linear perspective. So I think that's one of the coolest things about programming is showing people that this is a way that you can explore other fields, because it really demonstrates how interdisciplinary it is. And I think because in the future, I may not get more CS majors or whatever, but I want to get more people that just know what programming is and think to themselves like, well, my job is X, maybe I can use programming to enhance my job, right? There's like this firefighter who didn't think that their firefighting was efficient enough, so he learned Android and he made this firefighting app, right? This is what anyone should be able to do, is that you should just be able to be in whatever profession you're in and then just pick up programming, not to kind of make your life more efficient. Even whatever you are, if you're a housewife or house husband or whatever, there's so many ways you can use programming to make that more efficient, right? Anybody can use it. So that's a kind of particular vision I have, is beginning to integrate programming with all the other topics that we're teaching on Khan Academy, just as another way of exploring a topic and learning a topic.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. One thing I have to do before I forget is, Owen, would you please stand up? Owen Astrachan, he is the one who came up with the whole idea for this panel. So I just wanted to call him out and say thank you. So far, so good? Great. Okay, so now we can take questions from the audience, and we also have some questions coming in on our live feed here. So there's a microphone here, if you don't mind lining up there if you have questions for any of the panelists. And maybe while we're waiting for that, Gabby, is there? Yeah, if you would, sure.
For the non-technical folks who want to stay informed in tech, what do you recommend to gain info? I'm a hybrid between tech and non-tech and find myself approaching technical account manager roles. Where do I begin in self-learning?
Did everybody hear that?
No, I did.
Then I have heard it. Which one is it? For the non-technical folks, the bottom ones. For the non-technical folks who want to stay informed in tech, what do you recommend to gain info? I'm a hybrid between tech and non-tech and find myself approaching technical account manager roles. Where do I begin in self-learning?
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities for people that are older and suddenly want to start learning to program, especially if you're one in the bigger cities. So if you're a woman, definitely check out Girl Develop It. It's in something like 15 cities now, and the classes are very low cost. Otherwise, there's things like General Assembly. The classes are like $20. And that's pretty inexpensive. And then, of course, there's the online options as well. There's Team Treehouse is fairly popular, lynda.com, Code School. Those are all options. People tend to like going to the coding, the actual in-person coding meetups and things like Girl Develop It, because there's a community around it as well. And if you're somebody who's 50 years old and suddenly decided that you're going to get into the crazy world of programming, it does help if you have a community, especially if you're typically underrepresented. So I would definitely check out the in-person meetups like that. Otherwise, there's all those online options as well.
I have a very similar answer with a single URL. If you go to code.org/learn, we have a directory of both the online options and the local options. We've actually worked to build a map of every single boot camp, summer camp, workshop, and the public schools that offer computer science, and you can filter so you can weed out the public schools, because the person asking this question probably wants to find a non-public school option. And you can choose between those and the online options, including, obviously, Khan Academy.
Okay. Your question? Yes.
Hi.
Yeah, there you are.
My name is Zana. I'm from the Technology Institute of Technology, and I have 3 comments. First, thank you. It was very interesting. Second, because maybe I'm not a native speaker of English and very sensitive to what people are saying, and I keep hearing in this session, girls, 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 girls. avoid it, because it will be heard like we are doing it for girls and it fits only girls, and we do not want to do what girls do. So I think that we should reduce the use of this word, and maybe use diversity or other kinds of words to deliver this message. And the second comment is about teacher certification. And because the close relationships to the industry, in this case of this panel, I would like to describe in 3 sentences what we are doing in Israel in order to overcome the shortage in teachers for STEM topics. We, at the Technion, not in Israel, at the Technion, we enable all the technical graduates, all the technical students to study in parallel to their science and engineering degree teaching certificate. So we provide them an additional profession that they can use if they went in parallel to their job in the industry, or when they want to year off, or any other opportunity. And it increases discourse between the industry and the education. And there are so many ideas in how they apply this knowledge, and I think that in this case, when it's not informal education, it fits very well, and if you want, I can give you more ideas, and it doesn't cost a lot of money.
Any comments?
I mean, I am guilty of using girls as a shortcut for diversity as well. I don't use it anywhere in our actual messaging. I just don't talk about it, and because I don't actually particularly want the people doing learning programming to spend their whole time thinking about what they are and if they're meant to be doing it or not. But I think when we're talking about it here, it is kind of tempting to use shortcut terminology.
There is research at the University of Washington that shows that if you talk to women about the shortage of women in computer science, it helps them participate more. Actually, because they don't think, oh, it's just me. I thought, they realize there's a problem that it's contributing to fix.
Cool. Jane?
I just want to say that it sounded like an interesting question. I couldn't hear it.
Jane, could you turn down the volume on your computer? I think that might help with the feedback.
Ah, okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
Okay?
I just want to state that I could not hear the question, but I know that from writing Stuck in the Shallow End and having students come up saying thank you for writing this, it has made me feel that I'm not crazy, and it's made me sort of stick it out and stay in the field. So I think having conversation about these things is really important, because there's always an elephant in the room, and when it's not spoken, people just take their own, feel discouraged, and they just leave.
Yep, that is exactly what the University of Washington research also showed.
Yeah.
Was that for like older women, or because I think with the older
UW research was for college-aged women. Yeah.
Next question.
Hello. I actually work at an elementary school, and we have a computer lab, and actually every student in our school in 1st through 5th grade participated in the Hour of Code, as did actually many students K-12 in our district. And I think that experience actually had a big hand in pushing our district to actually now adopt computer science standards. And it's actually reshaping what we're doing K-12. It's very exciting. Right now, as I'm sure you guys are all well aware, nationwide, we're also in the process of adopting Common Core standards, of which computer science is noticeably absent. And I'm just wondering if Pam could speak at all to computer science and its relationship to the Common Core standards, and maybe where we can help it fit in.
First of all, thank you for doing the Hour of Code, and it's really just because of examples like yours that this thing has been such an amazing collective industry success in terms of reshaping American education. We regularly run into the question you asked from schools saying, I'm just coping with the state forcing me to do all this Common Core stuff. I can't do one more thing. And our solution to that is the curriculum we're creating, at least from K through 8, is being designed to be aligned to both Common Core math or English standards or to the science standards. So for example, our curriculum for middle school math specifically teaches Common Core middle school math topics, but instead of teaching it with a graphing calculator, it teaches it using a computer programming tool. And our curriculum for middle school science isn't a computer science curriculum, it is a middle school science curriculum that teaches things like how environments respond to things or how diseases spread, and helps you simulate those things to run your own scientific experiments. And again, instead of using a petri dish as your experimenting tool, you're using a computer and actually writing your own simulator. And the same applies to the work we're doing at the elementary school levels as well. So that when we pitch this to schools, they're not adding computer science, they're adding math and English, and it happens that the computer is helping them, and the kids are also learning computer programming along the way.
Okay, I just want to take one question online. Excuse me? Okay, Jane?
Just wanted to add to that we've actually found that the Common Core has helped our cause to get computer science into the schools, because part of the language of the Common Core
locked up.
And we have mapped.
Oh, she's still talking. Okay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Okay, we lost you for just a moment.
We have mapped on what we teach in computer science, exploring computer science, to the Common Core. So there is an overlap, and we have to figure out some way to share that with you, the community, because we actually see this as an opportunity that's opened us for computer science.
I could just add to that, that on the hack.sri.com website is a link to the mappings to the writing standards, which includes the Common Core and Next Generation Science standards. So for those of you who are interested, that's available.
Okay, thank you. So let me do one online, and then we'll take the next audience question. Let's see. As a technology coordinator for a large district, 160K plus students, are there district-wide resources available for large-scale implementations of Khan Academy?
So not sure what that means by district-wide resources. I am not one of the people that work on the district implementation teams, but I could put him in touch with the people who do that district implementations. I've been doing the curriculum, but
okay, it's
yeah,
okay.
I'd have to ask.
Come back to that later. Next one from the audience.
Thank you, guys. In the coming years, if you could have your way and redo the curriculum and allocate time for computer science within, even from like K up to 12, where would you see that? As a weekly thing in a lab, or preferably as in part of the 8-hour school day? And then how would you allocate time accordingly from different subjects? And
my opinion is that weaving it through all the subjects is the best way to do it. And in much the same way that Pamela mentioned, within art history, teaching things like perspective using computer programming. If you think about English literature is something that is its own subject, but the English spoken language is also something that you participate in every single classroom you learn in. And I think computer programming is a tool, and computer science basically is something that applies to lots of different courses and so on. Learning about how society works, the elements of how you learn about, the societal impacts of technology can go in any other class, not just in computer science class. Or data analysis, for sure, can be integrated into a history class, for example. This may be a little bit of a cop-out, so it's not saying how many hours worth of time should be spent in a given week. For sure, more than is currently allocated, which is nearly 0 for most kids. But I think the way to do it isn't purely as a separate field. I think the way to do it is to just help people realize that this actually is something that touches all aspects of education and every field.
Right. Yeah, I would like when they do group projects, there's so many ways that you can use different programming skills for group projects. Like since I was like in 3rd grade, I was using programming for every project I did. So you can certainly use it, like you decide to turn your thing into a web page, you decide to do data analysis. So I think if we have a lot more projects in the curriculum, it becomes a skill that they can use to make their projects really, really cool.
Jane, anything?
No.
Okay. I have a question, Pamela, for you that you can answer, which is, will Khan Academy ever teach any other languages other than JavaScript and processing.js?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we've got a pretty big investment in processing.js right now, and there's a big community around that. However, we're working on making that whole, because around that we've got the editor, and we've got the checking for errors, and we have the sharing and all that stuff. So we don't want to just teach a language without having the ways of assessing it and the ways of having a community around it. So we're making sure that we're going to teach new languages in a way that we can still have all the richness of the current JavaScript curriculum. So we're working. Our goal is basically to be able to start doing that this summer. With probably the first goal of teaching HTML and having that be an HTML editor. But ultimately, I want to, like, people ask, are you going to teach language X? I'm not interested in language X. I'm interested in what can I use language X for, or what does language X show me that language Y doesn't, right? So if we're going to teach Python, I don't want to teach Python for making drawings and animations. I want to teach Python for doing data analysis and scraping, right? Because that's a particular use case, right? So I'd rather just introduce new languages plus use cases, right? Like I could see teaching functional programming because it actually like opens up your mind in a different way, right? So yeah, we're hoping to generalize our language environment so that we can bring on these new languages and use cases.
Okay, next question from the audience.
Hello, I just want to start by thanking you for this opportunity. I want to thank Hadi for the wonderful CSN week we hosted this year, because we had all those things available to us and we could do whole school activities. I have been involved in CS advocacy for many years as a CSTA chapter leader, and I'm just wondering, what are your plans and vision to include CSTA leaders, chapter leaders, and cohort leadership members in your next project? That's your vision of bringing computer science to all students. Thank you.
That's a great question. Well, the first way we want to use, well, we have a deep partnership with the CSTA, and there's many things we've asked the CSTA to help us with the leadership and the different chapters to help us. The biggest project going on right now is the work in different states on political advocacy on getting computer science to count for high school graduation. But there's a number of other things that we want CSTA chapters to help us with. The one that I mentioned at my keynote, which is a very, very fresh 1.5-week-old idea, is helping scaling professional development in elementary schools. And that's something where, the tough thing, we constantly think about how to scale and how to scale cost effectively. And flying a facilitator to every single city in the country is both cost prohibitive but also really physically exhausting. But it's probably necessary for the high school level of PD that we're teaching, because it's a multi-week or multi-day workshop. But was our elementary school PD that we want to do, the professional development at the grades K through 5, is something that should be adopted by lots and lots of different groups that help us, and the CSTA chapters and chapter leads are a perfect partner for that, to host effectively a one-day workshop and recruit elementary teachers near you from school districts near you to help make that happen. And I'm sure you'll be hearing about that through Chris Stevenson in the coming weeks.
Okay, last question from the audience.
So I don't know if you all are aware of the new educational requirements that are being proposed for the state of Texas, but you might be able to chalk one of those up as your early success stories. I was wondering about your thoughts for it. So if you're not aware, not only is computer science AP being allowed as a math credit for everyone, there's also an endorsement in STEM, which can include up to 4 years of computer science. The real kicker, and the one that's controversial, is computer science now counts as a foreign language. I want to know your thoughts on that.
Texas isn't the only state that is doing that. Texas, unfortunately, has passed it. Kentucky was this close to doing that, and we I wouldn't say vigorously oppose it, but we definitely oppose it. We actually have a white paper on the topic, and we've used that in the states where we caught wind of it before a change happened to reverse it. And in Kentucky, we specifically took a bill that was doing that and made it instead a bill that is doing the right thing at calling computer science and math or science. And the reasons to not count it, the reason it counts as a foreign language in people's minds is because they think computer programming, computer language is foreign language, and that's about the level of research or thought that goes into the process, and it captures people's imagination. You know, why should my kid learn French, which is not going to be as useful, presumably, as JavaScript? However, the challenge with making a change like that, first off, it's not a foreign language, and you lose the cultural benefits of learning a foreign language and all the other things that happen in a foreign language class. And a lot of what goes on in your brain while you're doing computer programming is far closer to what happens in either math class or science class with the analytical thinking. But then much more specifically, the teacher certification pathway suddenly gets totally screwed up. So in a state that counts computer science as a foreign language, you'll need Spanish and French teachers teaching computer science. And then furthermore, kids who take computer science to qualify for a foreign language can't get into college because colleges won't accept it. I mean, all these things are, it is a very, very broken thing to do. So we're completely opposed to it, and we have all of that laid out in our white paper if anybody wants to read it.
Yeah. I actually think that you probably should take more of a foreign language. It was actually controversial at the college I went to, USC. Computer science was the only engineering major that did require a additional, like an actual foreign language. And everybody always was mad about this, like, why do we have to know this and nobody else does? And it was for historical reasons. But the interesting thing is that I actually did far better in my computer science classes than, because I was a linguistics minor, than the people that weren't doing it, because somehow having both that knowledge helps. So, you know, we'd have to go deep into the brain to see all this, but I really think that they're obviously different things. Yeah, I guess the other thing I don't know is like so having it be a math requirement. I find that I'm actually good at programming, but I tend to say I'm bad at math. So I don't know if having it be a math requirement means that they take less math. Being at Khan Academy forces me to be around people that are really good at math and to get better at math because I'm around them. So I don't know if there's any concern there with taking away math or anything like that, because that's interesting to me.
So our policy work is to make it satisfy existing math requirements, so that in a state that requires 4 years of math, the 4th year can be a computer science class instead of a math class.
It's interesting.
Which is much more reasonable than instead of taking a foreign language, take computer science.
But it needs to be a CS requirement. That's what we're all working towards.
Yeah.
Jane, anything on that?
No, not.
Okay, well, I think that's it. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our panelists for being here, especially Jane, putting up with the technical issues. But we really appreciate your coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.